Hi, Abraham.
We are.
I know you are. And I think my mother is now, too. She took her life 2 weeks ago. And I know that she's in a really good place. I've felt her, and I have seen her. And she was in a really bad place, it seemed, from my perspective, for a very long time. It wasn't a surprise that she did it. And
Well, it was a tremendous relief to her, was it to you?
yeah, it was. It was. And yet there's a part of me that still feels as though I should have been able to do something, or in fact, when my father called the morning that she had done it, as soon as he told me that, I said, I knew it. I had said goodbye to her on Sunday, and there was a part of me that knew it, and I didn't go there. So I guess part of me is feeling like, well, is there something that I could have done or should have done? And then I think, no, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. I wanted her to feel that relief. I wanted her to finally not be so sad anymore and not make my father so sad and all of that. And so I guess it's just a bigger view of it somehow, so I can get me to a better feeling place about this.
We want to start by acknowledging that there is only life.
Yes.
And that sometimes your life is focused here in this physical body, and we want you to take a sort of downstream glance as you acknowledge that everyone who you know who is in physical form is going to experience that. In other words, they're going to experience the death experience. And then we want to say, not just in an effort to soothe you or soften your resistance around this or anyone else who is listening in, but because it is absolutely the way that it is, because everyone is the creator of their own experience. Every death is self-inflicted, as is everything else. So you want to be able to say and know that every death is suicide, but the word suicide has that negative attachment to it. And the negative attachment that many people place upon it, besides the religious connotations that they have conjured, but the one that you are fashioning here, is about the feeling that there could have been other ways of going about this, and shouldn't she have tried some other things? Esther remembers receiving news like this of a dear friend that she had met through her Abraham work. And when she received word that this woman had taken her own life, the thoughts that were going through Esther's mind was, this is wasted life. It's a waste because it didn't have to be that way. We had to sneak up on her when she wasn't thinking about it and sort of throw a thought in that eventually soothed her back into alignment. As we said to Esther, you can't waste life because life is eternal. So before you come into your physical body, you are a stream of consciousness, and there's no resistance in that stream. You are pure positive energy. Then you're born into your physical body, and it separates a bit. Just because of, even as an infant, your observation of what's going on in that limited world, your vibration is not as pure as it was just by your attention to your surroundings and to how your parents feel and so on. For the most part, you are trained, even as little children, into a responsible observation of life experience that serves to separate you more and more. Thus, the answer that we gave to the little child who said, why are grown-ups so grumpy? The longer they live, the more they find to push against and cause further and further separation in their vibration. Then some, especially those who powerfully remember this feeling of alignment, will find drugs, or they'll use alcohol. They'll find something to attempt to close this gap. And to the extent that the substance distracts them from what they're fussing and worrying about, they do achieve a sort of vibrational relief or change in it. So then they're disconnected. They find meditation. They come into alignment. They come out of meditation and they start worrying again, they go out of alignment. They go to sleep, they come back into alignment. They wake up, they come out of alignment. They take a nap, they go into alignment. They wake up, they go out of alignment. They find something to appreciate, they come into closer alignment. They find something to criticize, they go more out of alignment. In other words, most people are not tending to this on purpose. But the more they live life, the more this calls them. And the more this calls them when they're doing this, the worse it feels. Until some, like your mother, who remember at very deep levels, begin to hear the call of Source. And the call of Source, people don't want to hear this. Sometimes the call of Source, that death experience is a closing of the gap. Talk about a quantum leap. Talk about a moving of vibration powerfully, you see. There are those who want to control the conditions of your life, who would tell you that you don't even have the right about that. And we want to say to everybody who attempts to control anybody, you can't do it. And to the extent that you try to do it, you're messing up your own life. So we would say about those, like your mother, and to them as well, that decision was not easy in coming. And that powerful decision was an act of deliberate creation. And it was the ultimate in discovering what allowing truly is, because in one fell swoop, there was a releasing of all contradicted energy and a reemerging back into pure positive energy. So we know that there are many, even those in this room, who are not having any of this from us. In other words, Esther remembers another friend who had been listening to Abraham for quite some time. And she was very upset with Abraham because she felt like Abraham's perspective on death was such that it had literally given her daughter permission to take her own life. And we said to this grieving mother, so what was your daughter's life like? And she described briefly the intensity of the pain and struggle and strain that she was living. And we said, and you would wish her to return right now to that rather than to this pure positive energy that she's experiencing? And this mother said yes, and meant it, because she was still hopeful that, even though we were not using the terminology at that time about this powerful upstream battle that this woman had been fighting for a long time, she still felt that fighting that current would ultimately bring her daughter to the joy that she was seeking. And we are saying that until you turn and go with the flow, you will never find it. And that in the death experience, you really have turned and gone with the flow.
Yeah, and I don't want her back, and I wouldn't want her back in the pain. I guess the other part of my question is how do you understand 40 years of such pain?
But what you understand is that she was not really unique in it, that she was like so many people. She'd been trained to fight the current. In other words, you have to understand that even as we're having this conversation that is beginning to feel so normal to you, this conversation would not feel normal with the majority of the people on the planet. In other words, the majority of the people in your nation would really take issue with what we have just spoken just now about your mother's death. Many of them would want to damn her to hell forever. And they would want to make an example of her, of what others should not do, but they know not about the eternal nature of their being. When you find those thoughts that you are pushing so hard against, we want you to feel the intensity of the separation between that thought and who you really are and what you really are knows, you see. And so don't try to figure it out. I
guess that's what it is. I've been trying to figure it out.
In doing so, you either have to blame her or blame your father or blame yourself or blame society or blame her parents or blame. And in doing so, all you do is buck the current that makes you more separated from who you are and ultimately could bring you to the same place of looking for a faster way of relief, you see. So
no, I won't be doing that. I'm okay.
Yes, you will.
Oh.
Everyone does.
Yeah, it just depends what it is,
you
right?
See, but most of you have to get run over by a really big truck. And then you say, well, now I have an excuse.
Yeah.
Or you contract a disease and you say, I don't want to go, but I must.
Yeah.
Everything that happens to everyone is done to self by self. And all of you are going to die. So stop fussing over those that just did it quicker. And instead, embrace the eternal nature of who you are as you are contemplating this subject of your mother. And it's going to come up a lot for you for a number of reasons. You've activated it within your vibration because of what's happened, and she is keenly focused upon you. So as a thought or a memory or an experience that you shared or anything about it comes up, just stop in the moment and ask yourself a very brief, easy to identify question. Is this an upstream thought or a downstream thought? And then it's easy to identify by the way you feel. And most of them will be upstream for a while. And then stop and say, how can I turn this thought downstream? Don't avoid the subject. Don't change the subject. Stay on the subject that is active within you, that's giving you the emotion that you're having, and deliberately try to find a way of at least letting go of the paddles and paddling upstream. And what you're going to notice is that you're going to find satisfaction about this subject very, very quickly. You can have the relationship you always wanted with your mother now. The thing that you worry more about than all other things put together is the thing that every one of you is going to experience. In other words, you worry about this death thing, and because you worry so much about it, most of you don't really let yourself live for fear you'll die. And you will for sure. So it's time to get over it. And so we want to say there is no death, but if there could be what humans call death, it's got to be just not going with the flow. Because when you go with the flow, it's only life. You went with the flow when you came into this body. You go with the flow as life comes through you, and you go with the flow as you reemerge back into non-physical. In other words, that is the flow. And the only thing that even remotely resembles what humans feel when they use the word death is not going with the flow. So it's time for all of you to get over this death thing for two reasons. There isn't any, and because all of you are going to experience the withdrawal from your attention in this physical body. But if you knew what that withdrawal feels like, if you Jerry was telling the story last night at dinner again of riding in the back, riding at... Again? Well, he tells this story on a really regular basis.
Really?
He's in the back of a truck tutoring some children, and the children's father is driving the truck, and it is already known that the truck has no brakes, and they are on a mountain road, but the father says, no problem, I can control the truck with the gears, I do it all the time. And so he is going down this mountain, and Jerry can hear that they're gaining speed, and he can hear this man trying to lower the gear and lower it, but it's not happening. It's moving too fast, and he's not able to do it. And so Jerry says to the children, well, this is it. And what he meant is, it's inevitable that we're going to go over this cliff, and this will be it. But this man, who did have reasonable control of his truck, instead of going over the cliff, rammed it into the side of the mountain, and the truck just turned over. And the canvas top that was over them in the back of this truck protected them as they hit the pavement, but then the truck landed on top of them and made all of them unconscious. And when Jerry regained consciousness, he felt free of his fear of death. And years later, he is still telling the story to anyone who will listen. And he told it to us and announced to us, I do not fear death because I know what it's like. It's just, I'm alert, I'm awake, I'm conscious, and then unconscious. And we said, that is nothing like death. You went from conscious, conscious, conscious to unconscious. Death is conscious, conscious, conscious to super conscious.